I want to set the scene for people who are
Okay.
unfamiliar with the company and unfamiliar with what you're doing because it's revolutionary in so many ways, to me at least.
All right.
And I want you to start off by explaining to my grandmother
Uh-huh.
what GPT-3 is.
Okay. Yeah. So GPT-3 is a language prediction model. And the way it works is if you have, like, let's say 10 sentences that are like different kinds of sentences, if you just look at those and then somebody cuts that sentence off halfway, and then they ask you, how does this sentence end? What imagine the first thing that comes to your mind to finish that sentence, right? What comes out of your head is actually a function of all the sentences you've ever imported into your brain or thought about, right? And then you're using all of like that word map that's kind of in your brain to generate what the most likely next set of words are. And we can do that, right? One, it's not going to be accurate, but two, it'll be grammatically correct, it'll be spelled correctly, and it will be on topic. Like it will make sense, at least to you. So if you think about this human brain, it's really just this neural network. So it's connecting all these words around, and they kind of graph around topic areas and grammatic structures and all that. So as it turns out, a computer can do that. And the early models were built on these Markov chains. I don't know. It's just like a Markov came up with it and whatever. It's an algorithm, and it's a the quality of the output is a function of the data set and the type of model that gets built. So if you have a tiny bit of data, your language prediction tool is going to generate kind of nonsensical outcomes because each word will be kind of random. They're not really tied together. But as it turns out, if you make that data set very big, so if you have like 10% of the internet in your model and you build the model in the way that people just recently figured out how to do it, it can generate human sounding text that can make sense contextually and grammatically correct and the spelling's good. And the interesting thing is any information that's in the entire data set becomes almost like I mean, it is a knowledge base, but it's instantly accessible. All right. Long story short, the internet can talk back to us.
It's crazy.
All
It's
right.
crazy to think
We
about.
we gave it enough information. We're incentivized to upload content, words, pictures, video, all that. And once you've compiled enough of this data, you can actually train an AI model to make sense of it. So Google, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, they all have their own internal teams, AI teams. These AI engineers make like, I don't know, 500K to 2 million a year, just sifting through all the data that their users generate. All right. So who gets to own that data? Not the users. The company owns it, right? The company is going to profit off of all that. So in light of that, and you see like, all right, we got more data, we're uploading more data. These companies are getting bigger. They have unlimited cash in the bank. They have unlimited access to talent and human capital. They're going to, like, one of them is going to win this AI race, and it's going to be game over because they'll be able to capture the most value out of these tools. So a company called OpenAI formed in 2014, and their goal was to build a human brain, a thinking computer. And they had a number of backers, well-known Silicon Valley backers. Elon Musk was a backer, and they started to generate these AI models. And in the process, they built their own AI team, and they formed it around this mission of democratizing access to these AI models. So they didn't want these other companies to just own them and then use them internally. They wanted to actually expose them as an API, like as like an open AI system that everyone on the planet could have access to.
Do you view it as a war? Sorry to cut you off. Do you view it as a war between OpenAI versus big tech companies?
I'm not, yeah, I don't work for OpenAI, but I think they do. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's pretty clear they do.
gotcha. No,
And
keep going.
I don't think that's companies talk about war all the time. I don't think that's the wrong way to look at it. Yeah. So, so they launched the second iteration called GPT-2 in 2019, and it was open access, so anyone could download the entire model and build an application on it. So then what happened was some people built an application where you had a little text box, you type something in and auto completes it. So one of these sites was talktotransformer.com, which I used for about 40 hours, like just pinging it over and over again. Like most of it was nonsense. 1 in 100 was insane. Like futuristic products I could never have thought of, like 0 to 1 ideas, which are like Peter Thiel's thing, right? So the thing I've been looking for was how do we enhance creativity? As an investor, I see the same startups getting built over and over and over again. Yet when you look on everybody's wall, dude, it's beige. Every wall on the planet is beige, right?
Yeah.
So this beige paint has infected the planet. And we only now realize it once we get on Zoom calls.
Yeah.
Right?
It's really true. I never noticed.
Dude, it infected the planet. You didn't know. So I got news for everybody. This is not the future. The future is not, it's not beige walls. Okay. So the interesting thing is when you have an AI that's trained on the entire internet, what you can do with it becomes crazy. So one of the prerequisites for creativity is what's called lateral thinking, which is bringing two different concepts together. And when you make the connection, it kind of clicks in your head and you go, wow, that's creative. Like I wouldn't have thought of that. So knowing that, I like tried to build some startup idea generators in Microsoft Excel, just like lists of random words, and then you put it together, and then like you just use like the random function to pull different ones, and then you put it all together. And I just go through there until something triggered a thought in my head, like, oh, that could be a business, that could be a business, that could be a business. It's very ugly, it's dirty, it's still fun to do. And so I did that. And then I also went on a website called brandbucket.com, which has logos and domain names that are for sale. So if you go and browse them, they'll actually trigger a company idea, or at least they do for me. So I flipped through 80,000 of these the past, like in March. Yeah.
Why so many?
Dude, the pandemic hit and I was like, boom, let me come up with some ideas. So I took 80,000 and that triggered about 150 different startup ideas. And I just kind of like high leveled them on paper. And then I realized like it takes 15 minutes to come up with an idea from beginning to end, which isn't much time. So then I realized that this, I was like, man, GPT-2, if there's a way to make that thing work for creative inspiration, then we're talking about a whole different ball game at that point. So there's a few months later in July, they launched GPT-3. They announced it's 100 times the size of the other model, and those numbers flip. So 1 in 10 results now is like nonsense, and 8 out of 10 are good, and then 1 or 2 out of 10 are really good. And I knew instantly that this would be commercially viable for some use cases. And so my venture partner and I, we like started building out these MVPs, minimally viable products, after we got access to GPT-3. And the first thing, like you get it and you're like generate startup ideas, and then it's like oh, unlimited. And I was like, all right, humans, game change, we're in the AI era now and it's creative. Don't try to harness this creativity. Like use it to be more creative and do interesting things. So we launched a few different projects. Project 3 called taglines.ai was just a tagline generator. We started charging money for it and people started paying. So we raised the price and they kept paying. We raised the price again and they kept paying. And then we had like 200 a month in recurring revenue, which was fantastic. This is back in like August and the beginning of September. And I was like, all right, this this is a business. I was like, marketing, copy, short form content generation. We need to build a platform around this. I was like, everybody's going to want to build a platform around this. This is an arms race to build it and like launch it and get it distributed. So my co-founder Chris finds the domain Copy.ai. It's for sale. It's $5,000, or you can rent it to own it for $167 a month. And so I was like, done. We got our domain name, which is the best on the planet. And dude, you can't beat a good domain name. There's nothing you can do to beat a good name for a company. This is number one. And I tell all the founders that I know this. And I've helped them avoid catastrophe with name changes over and over again. It's just people don't know your company, right? And so you have to be top of mind, and you have to make it memorable, like as easy to understand as possible. So that was huge for us. We built this whole company in public on Twitter. It's starting back in like May, just building and launching. Every time we launch, I'd get more followers. I would report results every time I said, hey, we have a new paying subscriber. I'd get more followers, I'd get more engagement. People ask how I did it. I tell them. And this just like cycle started repeating. So by the time we launched taglines, we were able to get 700 signups in the first day just with a tweet. So that's how we got our first paying customers, which is always like the startup question. How do you get your first paying customers? Guess what, dude? You do it one person at a time by building a following, and Twitter is the best channel for that if you're a startup founder. So then launched that. By the time we got to Copy.ai's launch in October 15th, I had about 2,200 followers, and that tweet got like 1,300 likes on it, and got us like 10,000 site visits, and over 2,000 signups. And now we're in business, dude. So that's a way to launch, right? That's all organic. So you didn't spam anyone with an email. You didn't pay a bunch of money for ads. If you're a founder with no money, which most founders have no money, that's really the best bet. It takes a few months to get started on Twitter, but there's like a pretty clear roadmap on how to do that now. So we did that, and then we had about 300 signups a day, 10 days later, even though we weren't promoting it. So we knew there was word of mouth. And then we had paid conversion rates that we knew would support going full time on it. So we quit our jobs about 2.5 to 3 weeks after we launched, which was crazy.
Was that an easy decision for you?
Yeah, it was for me. And Chris. Well, I'd always wanted to start a company. That's why I got into venture. It's why I became a CPA to start my career. It's why I worked in public accounting. It's why I went to a hedge fund and did software, analysis on big tech companies and software companies. It's why I went to a family-run startup to help grow that and like to see how to actually operate a business. So I've spent the first 12 years of my career building those foundations. Now, it's probably really stupid route, because if you just work at a really successful startup, I feel like you'd learn the same stuff in like 6 months. So well, I might have wasted a decade of my life, but I feel like I have an advantage on a first time founder having done all that. Because at least we had thought about like the big picture, the top down orientation, like where the industry is going, the trends and all that, and then being able to identify the opportunity when it shows up. That's all really hard stuff. It sounds easy in hindsight, but it's you either can see that or you can't.